Okay, so good morning. Right now I'd like to introduce myself for any of those that don't know me on the call or those that might be seeing this later. But my name is Jennifer Firmanek and I am the Dean for Advanced Manufacturing, Engineering and Applied Science at the Valparaiso campus, which also includes Michigan City and LaPorte. So we're here today to talk about MSSC, the testing involved, with specifically the courses under my school, but any school for that matter. Anybody else on the call, please feel free to introduce yourself as well.
Okay, my name is Mark Antrim. I am the Department Chair for Industrial Technologies and Advanced Automation and Robotics in Valparaiso, Michigan City, and LaPorte.
Sorry.
I'll jump in. My name is Mark Lewers. I'm a manager of testing services for Lake County and also the MSSC subject matter expert, SME.
Thank you.
I will go next. Huilin, Valpo Testing Center Manager.
Thanks, Wei Ling. Scott, you want to introduce yourself? If not, I can do that for you. I don't know if you have a mic. But Scott is one of our full-time faculty at the Valparaiso campus. He will be teaching one of these courses, so he's here listening in. I will also be obviously recording this and be sending it out to other faculty that will be teaching one of our ADMF courses that has the MSSC certifications embedded as well. So thank you everybody for joining us. This is really going to be informational and then a little bit of a Q&A session just to make sure that everybody starts off on the right foot, because I know there has been some issues in the past year or two with making sure students are starting on the right foot. So I think what I'd like to start with maybe is just, I have an adjunct joining us too. What I'd like to start with is just, I think I'd like to talk about in, Mark, maybe I'll run it over to you, the preferred testing method. I know in the past we've done ProctorU and Testing Center, but what in your regards, Mark, do you think is the preferred method for students to go to?
Well, you know, of course, that it varies across the area. Our students, Lake County students, for instance, can live in Porter area, Port, and vice versa. So it's kind of a mix. But so I really would stake claim and say there's no preferred. I think what serves the student best is what's going to be, you know, we can work with that. They'll have to know enough about their technical setup, system setup, you know, to know that they've got a strong internet, that they've got a proper place to sit and take the test without distraction or people around. And the things that would ordinarily be expected in a virtual proctoring situation if they go with ProctorU. But if everything is, you know, strong on their end from a virtual standpoint and live close to campus per se, or would rather come to campus, they could do either just as well. I would say if I had to put a bias on it, that they go to ProctorU. From the standpoint that I know that the Valparaiso campus, as we all are, it's still to some extent still on physical distancing. And I know that staffing levels, and Wei Ling can speak more directly about her center, but staffing levels may dictate, you know, a certain constraint in terms of their capacity to land a lot of on campus testing with everything else that they're doing.
So to my knowledge, for our courses, the ADMF courses specifically that fall under my umbrella, just so for those that are just joining us, there are basically 4 exams that they will eventually take if they take the whole series of ADMF 101 and 102. And in that is a series of 4 separate tests for which hopefully they will pass all 4 of those. And these are the times at which they are scheduled in each of those courses. So they are spread out over the course of the semester. I know, Wei Ling, you had some issues with students, if they do come to the testing center, they're not necessarily calling them by the right name, and there's been confusion over there. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's very important that the students are calling them by their names. For example, I'm here to take the MSSC safety test and not test 1, test 2, test 3. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The student gets confused themselves, so.
So
And just to
no,
tell you,
go
it's
ahead.
manufacturing, the full name actually is manufacturing processes and production. And maintenance is maintenance awareness. Those are the official names.
Maintenance and awareness.
Yes, maintenance awareness
Gotcha. Okay.
and manufacturing processes and production.
I totally butchered that.
A little bit. That's okay. Processes and production. You can take that comma out too.
Will do. Thank you.
I'm that guy.
That's okay. I'm that girl. That's good. Okay. Very good. So these are the official names. I'll make sure that I have those right when I send this information out for everybody to read it. But it's important for our faculty to know that those are the official names. So make sure your students know what tests they're taking when they go to schedule it. When we started COVID, it sounded like ProctorU was obviously, it sounded like the more preferred method just because the testing center was overloaded and they weren't able to do as many virtual exams to my knowledge. So now that the testing center has a little more flexibility, they are open on the campus. They still might have some lesser amount of seats. I should let Wei Ling speak to this. So it might be more difficult to get appointments. I'm not positive, but Wei Ling, are you fully open for all students in our ADMF courses to take these on campus if they wanted to do that?
I mean, we are open, but there's limited seating. They are going to be competing with the rest of students that are trying to get the same seats. So I honestly prefer ProctorU. I think that besides the technical part, if students do the right thing, following the steps to create an account, all the stuff, I don't see any problem of them trying to schedule at all through ProctorU.
Okay. I'll get to the ProctorU process in just a minute, but if the ProctorU just doesn't work for them, maybe they don't have the right equipment or they're just getting frustrated, whatever it might be, and they do want to make an appointment with you, how early can they make an appointment? And what will be that process?
They would have to request an appointment online, which is www.ivtech.edu/schedule now.
Sorry, is this for ProctorU? Sorry to interrupt. Is this for ProctorU?
No,
Oh,
in
this-
center.
Oh, center, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. How long in advance? They have to schedule appointment at least 40 hours in advance. They are not going to be able to find something they're trying to test the next day. With an exception, if there's nothing they are able to schedule anymore, they can give us a call, then we can try to see if we can fit them in. But that's in the, like exception, like, special occasion. If it's something happened, the student has to test next day, but they would actually have to go through that 40 hours
Very
waiting.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Can either Mark or Wei Ling, can you explain maybe the ProctorU process so that way faculty and students know what that process is?
So I have a question.
Do you want to share?
I have a question. So the instructors, to some extent, have been involved with the program through a course mentor. It used to be Josh. I can't think of Josh's last name right now. Whereby they had created some processes and things like that and placed them in course commons for instructors to access. They had created an assignment actually that made sure that both of the accounts were created the right way in advance, and it still is a very important step for us to support the student with MSSC testing. So I think there was a local or campus taught that may have been not accessing the course commons, and those instructors have been found to need more of help and assistance outside of what the course mentor has set up on both the CPT, the Certified Production Technician, and on the CLT, Logistics Technician side. So I just want to say that I'm aware of that resource, but I don't know if that's something that the campus courses are using right now.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'll also talk to Mark Antrim's on the line too. Mark, feel free to jump in, but I have pulled up here the actual ADMF 101 course right now that is in the Commons, and I think what you were just speaking about is in there. I did tool around a little bit. There are instructor steps and student steps to make sure
Yes.
that everybody is online with the MSSC and Proctor U information. And this is to be done on the first day of class. It's very obvious. And the instructions are pretty detailed. Mark, do you have anything Mark Antrim, do you have anything you wanted to add that maybe we're not doing, or maybe we just need to read these in more detail?
I think definitely that the instructors need to put that up on the projector if they've got it in the classroom when they're walking through the students. I know that's what helped me, making sure that every step was done correctly and walking around and making sure the students are doing it, not just looking at their phone or looking at something else on the computer. So
let me jump in and add that it probably is worth combing through, but it's important that, the first day of class, shortly thereafter, is the period where these students are going to create these accounts and have them pre-established. We don't officially launch any purchasing of assessments and assignments and all that type of thing until after the 100% refund date, when everyone's guaranteed to be in a seat, and they'll go ahead and place funds to acquire the assessments. So even though they sign up on the first day or a week or whatever, that needs to have happened. And that confirmation was coming through an assignment that was in the course. So the instructors could kind of check a box and say, okay, David finished his completely, the assignment's completed, I got my screenshots, whatever that process is that they've laid out. And we were accepting a proctor form, but the proctor form was like a certification from the instructor that everybody has completed, or a list of people has completed their account creations. And that's an important step. I mean, it's a multi-step process that was developed during the during the heat of the pandemic, but it forestalls, prevents really any real problems in flow down the road if this is done first. So it'll be at least a 2-week or at least to the 100% refund date before any real actionable things can start to happen.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mark, for that information. It does seem that there is an assignment that's embedded in here for the students, a 50-point assignment for them to do their account setup. So it seems that that is worth points, that they are to submit that. But this is just on the MSSC side of things. And it says the student's email address must match both an MSSC and Proctor U. I know two things that we were having issues with one particular student, if not more, last semester was one, either the student wasn't matching their email in both accounts because that's the only way I guess they can recognize it's the same person. And then number two, in Proctor U, you have to select 2 institutions as your schooling, not only the MSSC institution, but also select Ivy Tech as your second institution. And all of that information is in those student instructions that are listed here in the modules as well.
Right. And that was my recommendation about the same name, because that actually the email address is a tiebreaker, John Williams versus John Williams. To assist MSSC in their part of what they do to plug someone into Proctor U. So that's kind of more what that is, as well as continuity, identifying them in the MSSC portal. And that's all we have really eyes on. We don't really have eyes into the Proctor U portal. So, it just helps everything run a little smooth.
And that's also good to know because on our end, anybody that's an Ivy Tech staff, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have the rights to be able to see anything that's happening in Proctor U. So it makes it very difficult for administration, instructors, even you in testing center to be able to see or to help things in Proctor U with students. So what would you recommend to a student that's just struggling to figure out how to get into Proctor U? They can't get things linked or they can't find their test or whatever the questions might be. What suggestions would you have to them?
Well, to be honest, Proctor U's involvement with our certification students is minimal. Okay, you have to know that their customer service people are not familiar and maybe never will be specifically with our certification testing activity as apart from the other academic testing that they do. So they're poorly suited to deal with any of our student side questions and issues only as it relates to them administering a test. Okay. I'm going to roll back for a quick second on the the enrollments. So when they do create a Proctor U account, the recommendation was that they add Ivy Tech and they add the Manufacturing Skill Standards Council for convenience. So that if they ever had interaction with Proctor U on a non-MSSC basis, that they wouldn't have to have separate accounts. So that was the premise behind that. But once the scheduling is done for them to take a Proctor U test, then the process goes straight through for them to schedule their exam with Proctor U through the Proctor U portal, and then they take their test.
Good to know. Thank you so much. I'm going to just open the floor at this point to see if anybody has any questions. I know I've got two faculty plus our chair on the line too. Does anybody have any questions about anything with MSSC?
I want to add something,
Go ahead.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the class, it can be very, very helpful if someone, they let the testing center know on who needs to test through Proctor U versus who is definitely going to need to go on campus, because that'll affect, there's two classes or two types of assessments we can purchase. And we want to go ahead and make the correct purchases and be ready to support them, their testing schedule and meeting their deadlines. Clearly, the Proctor U process is a longer process. It starts out the same with testing on campus as far as what we need as a testing center, but then there's some internal pieces by MSSC, and then there's some scheduling there's some scheduling considerations on the Proctor U side. And I can talk about how at some point, how that looks to the student so they can get a sense of when they can schedule, because it's really, it's impactful. Let me just do that. Can I have a moment to do that? Okay.
Sure.
If a student chooses to do Proctor U and notifies the center, Wei-Ling will order the assessment for Proctor U. It'll be a Proctor U purchase and so forth. It takes about a day for the partner at MSSC called NOCTI to generate the codes for testing. Then MSSC on a business day, and I'll stress business days versus days over weekends or whatever. It'll take MSSC a day to pick up those codes, a business day or two, and to apply those codes to the Proctor U account. They'll go out and they'll look for a properly created Proctor U account that has MSSC as one of the enrollments, and they'll be able to hang it out there for the student. Now, depending on how diligent the student is and goes out to their portal at Proctor U and sees that the exam is there, then they can schedule that exam. If they wait 2 or 3 days to check back, it's 2 or 3 days lost. Okay. Then the exam will show up in the My Sessions area of Proctor U. There's a button on that same screen that says Schedule Exam or Schedule New Exam that does not apply to us, for MSSC testing. They should ignore it. It's only when the description of the next test or the test that they are expecting shows up, and there's a schedule button right next to it, that they can click on that and schedule. Now, here it is. The way ProctorU has it set up, and I don't know that it's a topic of discussion or whatever, but I can tell you, if they can schedule an exam on the clock within 72 hours, it's free. If they try to schedule a test from when they're sitting there doing it in 24 hours, there's a $12 charge, $12 fee. And if they try to schedule a test between 24 and 72 hours, it's an $8 fee. But anything at 72 hours and greater is free. So if I'm sitting at the computer as a student and I've got to squeeze it into a deadline and I don't have 72 hours, I, as a student, will have to pay a fee. It's not something chargeable to Ivy Tech. If I can do it in timely fashion and do it outside of 72 hours, then it's free. And they can pick their date and their time. There's a lot of, ProctorU has a lot of capacity, and they can do it around the clock, which is a great convenience for a working student or what have you. So that sequence is critical.
That's good news, Mark. Thank you so much. I think that's really important to know.
Yeah, Mark, I also have one question on that. What about rescheduling? Is there a fee? Is it the same idea if it's under over 72 hours or anything like that?
Mark Lures, I think we might have lost your audio there. We don't seem to hear you right now. Sorry, Mark, we can't hear you. If you're trying to speak, we can't. Oh, he dumped out for a minute.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep the
Thank you.
conversation going. Maybe he'll jump back in. Bashir, it looked like you were going to say something. Did you have a question?
I need to be sure that what's the difference between ProctorU and the MSSC exam? What's the relationship between them?
Well, the ProctorU is simply just a virtual testing facility. So that way they can ensure that the student taking the exam is the student that's in your class. They are not MSSC experts by any means. MSSC is just the governing body that is delivering the exam. So they house the questions in the exam itself.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the student has their choice to be able to take it in ProctorU, which is a virtual proctor. So there's someone on the other end of the computer watching you take your exam. So that means you have to have a webcam in order to be able to ensure that John Doe is the student in your class, or they have the ability to go to the testing center locally at the Valpo campus. And Wei Ling, who's on the phone here, who is the manager of that facility, they can also proctor it as well in person. If the student is having issues with ProctorU, that could be, their go-to as well. So, but it has to be done in one of those two options. So that way it's proctored
Okay.
either virtually or in person.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Wei Ling, maybe do you know the answer to that about if a student cancels a ProctorU appointment, do the same fees apply when you try to reschedule?
I am not 100% sure about ProctorU, but with InCenter, if a student are canceling or no-show their appointment, they will have to repay the testing. I mean, not the testing fee, but the proctoring fee of $15. So
Okay.
if it's a late cancel or no-show, then yeah, when they reschedule, they would have to pick late cancel and they would have to pay $15. I am pretty sure that applies to ProctorU as well, but I am not 100% sure. But I can find out that answer and then let you guys know.
How far in advance do they have to let the testing center know if they need to reschedule?
48 hours.
Okay. That's good
Yeah.
information.
Yeah. So all those information are on the page when student scheduling. It
Okay.
tells them if their testing is Eastern time or Central time. But I think students are just not reading at all. They just schedule and,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just like the syllabus.
Yep. And then just to be clear, I don't know, just so that some instructor knows that IV techs do not work for ProctorU. The testing center, we don't work for ProctorU. So if students have a question about ProctorU, they would actually have to reach out directly to ProctorU, not the testing center. We cannot get into their account at all.
Yeah, that's a mess. And actually, if the student has a practical or technical problem or a problem with ProctorU, they should probably send me a message. So as a kind of a central point of contact, because I do have a contact inside of ProctorU that is well familiar with Ivy Tech and works with us to deal with things. But yeah, like I said before, the regular representative and the chat line and all that kind of support stuff won't be able to relate to our activity.
So can I put your information in here, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you like them to contact you?
Email best to have a paper trail and such things.
What's your email?
Oh, M Lures.
And that's for
I
students
apologize.
to contact you, right? If there's issues
Um,
or faculty?
yeah, either, I guess, either.
Okay.
I'm tethering from my phone and I didn't realize how low my phone was and it cut off.
That's okay. Figured.
Yeah. I think I was going to finish up and just say about the email. So 6 days after Wailing assigns the assessment to the student, which is recorded in the MSSC portal, at least for us, they'll get an email. And the email will be from no reply. You've seen plenty of those. And they can search for it by remind, okay? The word remind in their inbox. And the email will open up and there will be a link in there for them to click on. And it'll actually channel them through they'll identify the account's existence and open up the ProctorU account and deposit the correct test into the My Sessions so that they can click on the schedule action button next to the test and begin their scheduling process.
That's good information, Mark. Thank you.
Mhm.
I appreciate it so much.
Mark, do you know if with late cancel or no show with ProctorU, is there a fee?
ProctorU is obviously limited on how long they can wait for a student. So I believe if a student is late to their appointment by 10 or 15, well, when the student goes into the take an exam, it goes to the homepage of proctoru.com. And then they, on the top of the right side, it'll say take an exam. And they have one. It'll show them how much time they have until their exam. But like I said, ProctorU will probably only wait 10 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes, and then it goes dormant. That causes a real problem, actually, if the student doesn't show up or they show up too late, because there's something, the way that they handle the codes, that can cause a problem. Okay. And, occasionally something happens and the proctoring session gets interrupted. Say they were in their test and a bad storm came through and knocked out internet during their test. And then you wanted to resume the test, but because they launched a test, I'd have to go through a side process with MSSC and NACI in order to restore that test and for them to inspect it and make sure everything was, on the as normal as it could have been. And then we have rejuvenate that and get them back on track. But ProctorU, for instance, if they did get interrupted by a weather squall or something, ProctorU independently could not just come back and reschedule and let them reschedule and resume their test. So that's where I would get an email. And we'd work it out.
That's important. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions or anything they want to fill in here? I do think it's very important that we've already said it once, but just as a kind of a lasting note, I think it's very important what Mark said, Mark Antrim said, is that we really take the time on the first day of class, right after you go through your syllabus, to ensure that all students have created their accounts right up front on the first day, instead of letting them do that at home. Because we know what happens when we let students sometimes leave and do things at home is it doesn't get done. And then they're stuck waiting for a time period in order for when they can schedule something because they haven't set up their accounts yet. So it's really important that we do that right up front.
Correct.
All right, does anybody have anything else? I really want to thank everybody for being here and doing this because I think it'll be helpful moving forward, hopefully. At least having the key players to know who to contact for what.
Okay.
Well, thank you,
That's good.
Mark. Thank you, Wei Ling, for your time and sitting with us. And hopefully we'll get everybody on the right track starting this week. So I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
Yes,
for
thank you
having
to
me.
both of you. Yeah.
Everybody
Thank you
have
for
a
having
wonderful
me.
week.
You too.
Thank you.
All right.
All right,
Bye,
thank you.
everybody.
See ya.
Bye-bye.